huge escalation in the Hamas-Israeli conflict. This is actually a big deal. Hamas militant group has started a war that, quote, Israel will win, defense minister says. Yeah, no. Thousands of rockets in the country's ruling Hamas militant group announced the beginning of a new operation. Apparently, yeah, a bunch of Hamas soldiers stormed across the border, caught the IDF off guard, killed some soldiers, and they've been killing civilians too. They killed a mayor. They've been gaining some ground. I mean, yeah, I saw this a video of Palestinian men dancing atop an Israeli tank that had been set ablaze. The authenticity of the videos cannot be immediately verified. Oh, well, I saw it. I don't know. Wait for AP to verify it, I guess. They got one soldier alive. They captured one alive. Israel official declines to comment on captured Israelis. This is all happening, like, right now. Like right now. So, this is bad, isn't it? I mean, it's not great. Good work, Hamas. Everyone thinks this totally won't end in your deaths, the deaths of your loved ones. Why do you think Hamas gives it? They're fucking Islamic jihadists. Martyrdom is the name of the game. They don't give a shit. They die for their cause. Like they don't like you'll die for this. Yeah, they know. They're fine with that. Will the US get involved? No. Hamas is going to get all Palestinians killed. Yeah, Hamas is terrible, but I always have to stress whenever shit like this happens that the constant conflict and bloodshed and horror of what's going on with Israel and Palestine is a product of Israeli policy, right? Like Hamas is a ragtag militia group, and Israel is an advanced, fully operational modern military that is backed by the United States of America, that is engaged in policies that have escalated conflict consistently. No, Hamas is pieces of shit. No Israeli deserves to die to Hamas. But in terms of like systemic analysis, like what you have to do or like how you address this in the long term, this isn't like the war on terror shit, right? Like, what did we learn from the war on terror? It turns out that like constantly intervening in and bombing like Iraq or Syria or whatever doesn't actually fix these issues, and it just creates more terrorists, right? Like we created ISIS, you know, Al Qaeda. Like you go back far enough, it's like, oh well, it turns out that if you create like kind of instability or whatever, like that's what caused it. That's what causes Hamas. It's instability and a perceived inability to engage through other means to improve the situation for Palestinians. People lose hope, they give up, and they join Hamas. That's it. People who join terrorist groups in the Middle East or whatever, they're just the same as like the doomers over here who don't want to vote for Biden. I'm half joking. I'm not really joking. It's the same basic thing. If you give up and you think that there's like no path forward or whatever, you know, in America, you like, I don't know, become a gooner or whatever. And then if you're in Gaza or like, you know, Eastern Syria or whatever, it's like, oh, well, you know, there's not stable electricity for me to like goon to internet porn to. So join, I'll join ISIS or whatever, you know, like that's how, like, yeah, basically that's how it works. So again, like, Hamas, defending Hamas is bad. Don't defend Hamas. Hamas bad. Hamas all that shit, obviously. Like anyone who starts defending Hamas or like implying that Israeli civilians deserve what they get because of the government of Israel, like all of that. But again, it's like the war on terror, or it's like American street gangs. Did you guys know that American street gangs are bad? Did you know that like gangs in America will like kill and rape people and it's not good? But then it's like, oh, well, how do you deal with that, right? Well, you can go like the 1990s war on crime approach and give every single police precinct $50 trillion, and we can give all of our cops tanks and like fucking ceramic ultra armor that they can walk around in like RoboCop. And that doesn't really fix the fundamentals, does it? Or you can like address the socioeconomic inequality. Likewise, with Palestine, you address the fundamental underlying problems. A healthy Palestine does not produce Hamas, right? America doesn't have a Hamas. I don't think, to my knowledge. We're doing a little bit better off than Palestine. So, you know, 6 killed, about 200 wounded in Israel. At least 2 dozen are seriously or critically wounded. Probably a lot more than 6 people have been killed. The president of the regional council, Ophir Leibstein, was killed during an exchange of fire with terrorists. I can't like watch any media or videos or whatever on this because there's like a ton. I've already seen a video of somebody getting like scalped or something. Like, yeah. Yeah, maybe that was at Castrix. I don't know. There were reports of Hamas militants in IDF uniforms knocking on doors. Yeah, it's super. Like, Hamas is going for broke here. This is pretty much the last hurrah because after this is done, like I'm pretty sure Israel is unironically going to like glass Gaza. Like I'm barely joking. Like the response, this is like the largest escalation from Hamas in recent memory, at least. I mean, I don't like, depending on how it all passes out, it might like go back quite a bit. Like at the very least they're going to occupy the strip, but like they're probably gonna like, yeah, they're going to crack down on it really hard. Is that an overstatement? I mean, how did Hamas do this? Was the IDF asleep? Yeah, I mean, if you're determined enough, how many people do they have involved in the operation? Thousands, hundreds? I mean, you can break a point, especially because Israel's settlements are stretched kind of thin, right? Like it's not a clearly defined border because of the Israeli like settlement bullshit. Yeah, apparently they've like Hamas has like conquered some Israeli settlements or whatever, or retaken, I guess would be their language. Any chance of foreign nations getting involved? No, no. Israel doesn't need help dealing with Hamas. Like Israel's it's Israel. They've got more than enough military power. The IDF was basically asleep. It's tens of Hamas militants, not thousands, or so the news says. Is it only tens? I heard hundreds. It might just be tens, I guess. I don't know. It's always hard to say right away, right? Like some people will say thousands, some people will say it was five. Yeah, Netanyahu has declared war. This is so fucked, man. Yeah, that's the holiday. It's the 50th anniversary of the 1973 war. That's why. That's why they're doing it today. Also, if the IDF let this slip by them, how's it not the end of Bibi? Dude, no, Netanyahu is going to fucking get 99% of the vote. Do you guys know what happens to far-right anti-terror politicians after a terror attack? It, it goes huge for them. First map of the attack this morning. This is not easy for me to read. From here out, I take it, and this would have been the settlement. This would have been where they killed the mayor, I assume, because this is a larger settlement they went into. And there's this and this. This, okay, if we're dealing with like movement of this, it can't just be tens of people, right? Like it has to be hundreds at least. Do you think it could be a false flag? Nah. Hamas is inclined to do stuff like this anyway. Now, I do think that politicians like Netanyahu benefit from the existence of Hamas because Hamas being this big terror that they can point to is like an eternal justification for Israel to focus on security, consolidate, and conservative reactionary policies, blah, blah, blah. So, like, reactionary politicians benefit from external threats. Obviously, that's like a fascist line. Yeah, people don't look to strongmen if they feel like they're safe, but it's not a false flag, right? Like there's a difference between creating the conditions that allow for stuff like this to happen and like false flagging it, you know. It's a lot of territory to move out on like super quick, catch the IDF off guard. Actually, how much territory is it? Are these like individual streets? I guess I don't know. The total front here is more than a mile. I don't know. Israel is so small. The proportions and like size of the territory is just it's so much like smaller than any conflict that I normally look at. Do you think Mossad or other intel services knew that it was going to happen but let it happen as it benefits Israel? I don't know. It's not impossible, but I don't think there's any reason to believe that, like, by default, right? I don't think you should be suspicious by first principle. Like, maybe something happens or some evidence gets leaked or, like, somebody, lets it slip or whatever, and then we get concerned. It's not impossible, but I don't want to default to the conspiracy assumption. I do think that this benefits, like, reactionaries in government, but more often than not, I think it's easier to attribute stuff like this to incompetence. Kind of like with 9/11, right? Like by the best reading we have, like 9/11 wasn't a false flag or deliberate. It was just the intel agencies were all being pissy bitches and didn't want to communicate with each other. And they were all just like, well, maybe there's a threat, but like, I don't know. And then like it just happened, it's just because they're fucking stupid intel agencies. Is Israel just going to bomb the shit out of Gaza? They're probably going to invade, right? I like they're probably going to invade and like lock down the area. I doubt they would just bomb it. Won't that provoke Iran? Maybe, but there's not anything they can do about it. What is Russia's relation to Hamas? This isn't a Russia deal. The closest like influence outside of Israel and Palestine itself would be Iran. Iran obviously sides with the Palestinians. But they're not going to do anything. They're mass tear gassing the checkpoints as of 15 minutes ago. That makes sense. Did Biden condemn the attack yet? He needs to immediately. It is 4:48 a.m. in Washington D.C. I am sure that Biden will condemn the attack as soon as he's awake. I doubt that Biden is going to get out there in the Oval Office and be like, "Yeah, I endorse Hamas actually." He's been surprisingly left-wing on some economic issues, but I don't think he's going to go on out there with like the headband and the fucking balaclava and be like, "Yeah, Jack, actually, from the river to the sea." I don't think he's going to go that direction. You never know. I guess you never know with Sleepy Joe. You never know. Okay, but it'd be really funny. It would be mimetically valuable if he did that. Would he do both, like condemn Hamas, but ask Israel not to attack Gaza? No, no, no. He wouldn't do that. He's just going to condemn Hamas. Kilo Sunset, why is every post that you make in my chat now some kind of earnest recommendation to pull back on something or another? No, my Twitter thread is fine. The internet is going to be a terrible place for nuance in like the wake of this, because people get super fucking defensive over Israel shit on their own, and then there's also the fact that like Israeli intel officials pay people to go online and make your day worse by replying stupid shit in your comments. So yeah, it's a terrible time to be nuanced online. Obviously, look, if you don't like Hamas, like that's great. Hamas is pretty bad. Good opinion you have right there. What do you do about it, right? Like, how do you address terrorism? How do you address gangs? The answer is never just saying, well, gangs and terrorism are bad. Obviously, that's like it reminds me of that Ben Shapiro tweet where he was like, notably, nobody up on stage in this Democratic debate condemned crime. Like, crime is definitionally bad. Why the fuck would like Biden coming out against crime? Like, oh, well, have you come out against like murdering innocent civilians? So yeah, feel like that part is covered, like fairly obvious, right? So how do you like, actually deal with it? Because condemning terrorism clearly doesn't get rid of it. Um, but yeah, people hate the systemic analysis shit. They hate that shit. What do you think the reasonable best case scenario outcome is here? Do you think U.S. intervention is possible? No, U.S. intervention will not happen. Best outcome is that I guess like Hamas is stopped quickly and Israel doesn't kill too many like Palestinian civilians, I guess. Um, or restrict their water rights anymore. That's like the best case scenario, really. It's been long enough that we have videos up on this. Hold on.
As warning sirens sounded across southern and central Israel, including in Jerusalem, Israel's military said it was on a war footing. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has called an emergency meeting of security officials. And this morning's events are some of the most serious since Israel and Hamas fought a 10-day war in 2021. Sky's Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has the latest.
Barrage of rockets, which, as you say, Hamas claims to have been in excess of 5,000 rockets fired out of Gaza into Israel, started almost exactly 2 hours ago, just before 7 o'clock in the morning, Israel time. It meant that air raid sirens were going off around southern and central Israel. People were told to shelter indoors. There were mobile phone footage of plumes of smoke rising above some Israeli towns and cities, including Tel Aviv. The ambulance service in Israel, Magen David Adom, has reported that one person's been killed, 15 injured. I wouldn't be surprised if that figure rises. But
it's probably a lot more than that.
Still, but I think the most worrying development, and I think almost sort of unprecedented in the way it's happened, is that some Hamas fighters have managed to get over the border from Gaza into Israel, in some cases using paragliders. Benjamin Netanyahu is...
This is a massive security failure in Israel's end. Yeah, well, I guess it really depends on like how the media takes it, right? Like media tells people how to think, how to feel. If the narrative is the IDF fucked up massively by allowing this to happen, which they did, then that might be really bad for Bibi. And if the narrative is like we need a strong man to crack down on these Jew-hating terrorists, then that would be really good for Bibi. How the fuck did Hamas manage to produce 30k rockets without Mossad catching wind? Well, Hamas does get a lot of munitions from like sympathetic Islamic countries that kind of like funnel them in sometimes, but for the most part, the rockets that Hamas fires are not very good. like a lot of the rockets that Hamas fires are just like they're military bottle rockets. Not all of them. I mean, they can hurt and kill people, of course, but they're not like the shit that we can fire. You know, not like the shit uh Israel can fire. Hamas is claiming 35 kidnapped Israelis. 35? Jesus. Okay, well, they're either gonna. Ooh, okay, well, okay. So they want attention, obviously. 35 kid. Okay, so they're gonna try to negotiate for their release, or they're going to kill them on TV. I I don't think they would capture those people just to kill them on TV, right? This isn't like ISIS shit. No, hey, shh. Fucking climb the couch. Probably a trade. A trade for what? Israel isn't going to like cede land for hostages. This can only end badly for Hamas, I think. Well, the people in Hamas are ready to die. Islamic militancy basically comes by default with the your glorious martyrdom will to serve Allah will guarantee you a seat in heaven. That's like the main thing they believe, basically. Martyrdom is just a core tenet of Islamic militancy, and it's like they're all ready to die. So that's not the issue for them. Trade for prisoners, probably. What prisoners would Israel give up that they have that they would give up? I don't think they're going to negotiate. I genuinely think it's more likely that Israel ignores the hostages and just storms Gaza and risks the hostages getting killed. Like, I think it's more likely they would take like the Russian approach to this hostage negotiation than they would make meaningful concessions. Especially because, you know, would Hamas do a like reasonable Israel never ever ignores the hostage ever? Hold on, maybe I'm completely wrong here. How often do they do prisoner exchanges? Hold on. Famous prisoner swap deal. Okay, maybe I'm totally wrong here. 2011 agreement between Israel and Hamas to release Israeli soldier Gilad Shalit in exchange for 1,027 prisoners. Okay, never mind. I guess Israel will give literally anything for a hostage. Never mind. I'm 100% wrong. Apparently you can yeah, how many prisoners you got? Give me $1 trillion. You like what? One soldier for 1,000 prisoners? Okay. To be fair, this was a long-lasting case and pretty unusual. I'm sure this isn't the norm, but yeah. The prisoners released under the deal were collectively responsible for the killing of 569 Israelis. Dude, who was this soldier? Who was this guy? Fucking James Bond? Who was worth giving up? Holy shit. Look at this nerd. What is he was held captive for 5 years. He was just a regular guy? Okay, never mind. Hamas has gotten 35 hostages or more, and they are going to negotiate back literally all of the settlements. With if this is what one hostage gets you, with 35 hostages, Hamas is going to push Israel back to its like original borders. Yeah, literally, it's going to be the map, but in reverse. Yeah, this one. It's gonna be just like schlorp, like right back to the 46 borders. At that point, they'll give away Tel Aviv. Yeah, I guess. Biden's stance is anti-Hamas, Marviji.
Whoever בבקשה להתרחק מהחלונות, כולם בבקשה להתרחק מהחלונות.
I thought there'd be commentary.
Well, let's get the very latest from Gaza. Yumna El-Sayed is joining us from Gaza right now. So, Yumna, tell us more about the latest situation. Are rockets still being fired?
Rockets are still being fired very intensely from the Gaza Strip. We've also seen more and more videos and pictures come from the Palestinian fighters.
Palestinian raising of the latest Hamas offensive.
Many people were
taken by surprise?
I think many people were taken by surprise. I was not taken by surprise. Actually, yesterday evening, I said that what Israel is doing will lead to a reaction from the side of the resistance. Of course, the scale of what has happened is really amazing and surprising. And the fact that Israel was taken so much totally by surprise in an incident that never happened since 50 years shows many, many things. But let me first say that this act, this initiative by the resistance that we've seen is a response to Israeli settlers' terror that has been taking place all over the West Bank with the protection of the Israeli army. It is a response to the fact that the Israeli army and the settler terrorists killed 248 Palestinians, including 40 children. It is a reaction to the attacks on the Aqsa Mosque and the process of Judaization of not only Jerusalem and the Aqsa Mosque, but the whole of the West Bank. It is a reaction to what Netanyahu did when he raised a map in the United Nations of Israel, including the whole of the West Bank, Gaza Strip, and the Golan Heights, and the international community kept silent about it. But maybe politically, it is also a response to those who thought that through normalization with the Arab countries, they can liquidate and marginalize the Palestinian issue. It is coming back in the most possible forceful way. And what is happening today is showing that any mighty Israeli power, like any mighty military power like Israel, even if it has nuclear heads, even it has the best tanks in the world and the best planes, cannot stop the resistance of people who are determined to get free from occupation.
Yeah, I don't know anything about this guy, but the specific rhetoric he employs makes me suspect of his intentions and preferences. Just not getting into it, just a little sussy.
That have infiltrated into the Israeli towns. We've seen...
I mean, the underlying stuff he said about, like, the exploitation and terror committed against the Palestinian people is true. Israel has done monstrous things to the Palestinian people, but the language there kind of made it sound like he thought Hamas was doing freedom fighter stuff, which they're not. You know, it's a delicate subject. Yeah, Hamas is not the resistance, you know? They're radical Islamic extremists who, like, the people of Hamas fully want to do the Holocaust too, you know? Like, the goal of Hamas is not freedom for Palestine. It's freedom for Palestine, maybe, but also a giant spit roast with all the Jews of Israel on it. You know, we're not, you know, they're not like principled revolutionaries.
Fighters taking over Erez crossing and pictures of Israeli soldiers.
Parkus, you keep saying that. I've answered that earlier.
They're being killed. We've also seen videos of Israeli tank set on fire while Palestinian fighters around it celebrating. Other Israeli vehicles, another one. One was taken in the early hours of the morning, another one now in Gaza Strip. So two armed vehicles in Gaza taken by the Palestinian fighters. We've also recently just received a video showing, a very short video of 10 seconds showing two Israeli soldiers being captured in the hands of the Palestinian fighters. They say they have captured these two soldiers alive. The video, of course, shows the soldiers alive. The confrontations are still taking place inside those Israeli towns. Also, Palestinian fighters, have also said that they have taken over Ashkelon prison, which is after the Israeli town of Ashkelon, which is about 45 minutes away from the Erez crossing in the northern part of the Gaza Strip. So this shows...
This is such a huge, huge fuck up from the IDF. Man, maybe people in chat were right, man. Them getting caught off guard like this. It's one thing for like a sudden surge of people to like break through one specific point on a border and move forward, but like this is way more than that. Hold on, we're not showing any like bad shit here, right? I don't think they're just gonna like randomly show some horrible shit here. I mean, this is also on YouTube.
How far the Palestinian fighters have infiltrated into the Israeli towns from the borders with Gaza.
Right. Let's talk about the Erez crossing, because it's in the north of Gaza Strip. It has been under full Israeli control and presumably very high security. It's extraordinary that it's been taken, isn't it?
It's very extraordinary that this Erez crossing could be taken over by Palestinian fighters. But not just the Erez crossing, Nick, really. All the borders are...
I know they are Palestinian fighters, but I wish she wouldn't call them that. You know?
Set to be on very high security, very high amounts of soldiers deployed on the security fence between Gaza and Israel. It's very difficult to actually anticipate that there could be any kind of infiltration through these borders, to break these borders into the Israeli borders. I mean, there's always, whenever there is any kind of movement by the border.
More and more Palestinian reinforcements reportedly coming through the breaches in the border wall of Gaza. I don't think this is just a few dozen guys. That's your choice, Kayan.
Even in the buffer zone, which we call in the Palestinian side itself, away about 300 meters to 100 meters away from that separating fence, there is always an attack to stop.
If you know the history of Hamas, they forced themselves into leadership in the Palestinian territories. Rumors have it Israel helped fund them. Is that a rumor? Netanyahu defended funding them. Well, it's a little complicated, but it's unambiguous. Like, the existence of Hamas benefits Netanyahu and has historically, and Israel has done a lot to sort of facilitate the conditions for their existence. Hamas dropping paratroopers. Hamas doesn't have paratroopers.
Mommy.
These are just guys on a roof. And then a truck. Seriously, where the fuck is the IDF, dude? Holy shit, I think this video is safe to show.
Ima. Mommy.
What the fuck, dude? Where, seriously, like, legit, where the fuck is the IDF? What are you spending your goddamn military budget on? It's a holiday and the weekly day of rest. Most soldiers are probably at home. I was under the impression that if you were a soldier on guard, you, like, I don't know, took a nap, like, at base or so. Like, I don't think you actually, like, hey, here's the day you should attack us.
תזיז את הראשים שלכם מפה, תזיז את הראשים. אותי לא. מאמי?
Not paratroopers, paragliders. Fucking what? What the fuck? Really? This can't be. This isn't real. This is fake. That's fake. R/combat footage. Video showing possible paraglider attempting to infiltrate. I don't believe this. I don't believe this. I'm sorry. I don't. It's too stupid. It's too stupid. I don't believe it. I'm sorry. It's not. I've seen several videos of it. This has to be from like a different thing. Like this has to be from like 3 years ago. Somebody in Estonia did a goof or whatever. It's literally real. Okay. I don't. Okay. This NPR article mentions infiltration by paragliders. Okay. Whatever, dude. Yeah, I guess I can't blame the IDF for not being ready for that one.
That movement, whatever kind of it. So there has been a lot of young people trying to infiltrate, unarmed civilians trying to infiltrate many times. And
Right.
Israeli...
Hamas's Al-Qassam releases footage of the Al-Sakir Hawk paratroopers unit when infiltrating Israeli. Is this Hamas propaganda? Is this real? I can't tell what's real. I don't know what's real anymore. Is this real? Iron Dome can't stop this shit. That's true. Yeah, I can't believe Hamas has a guy to do the slick edits in the movie trailer music. Like, they also have a guy on call. Yeah, there's more videos of it. I guess it's real. Fucking okay, dude.
Army just says that it has arrested them, investigated them, and sent them back, for they did not hold any kind of threat towards. They just approached that fence. So for this kind of operation to happen in this amount and this precise way is really beyond imagination, a great surprise.
So is Israel fucked or what? No. The Israeli military is not going to fall to a bunch of people with parachutes and boat fans. They will be fine.
Not just to the Israeli side, but even to the residents of Gaza.
Yumna, just give us an idea of the sense, the mood there in Gaza amongst residents there, given the events that have unfolded so rapidly today.
Well, as this operation has been launched, already it started in the very early hours of this day, Saturday. Everything was already closed. All shops were already...
Are the Palestinians fucked? That's a better question. Yes.
Closed. They hadn't yet opened, but now areas or neighborhoods have instructed their local markets, local shops and supermarkets to open so that people can get their necessities and food supplies quickly because of what could be happening in the next coming hours. And the Israeli response on these attacks or these rockets being launched from Gaza. Now, as for the people here in Gaza have already been living under a stifling Israeli blockade for the past 17 years. The sense is a common sense of fear, and in great worry because, again, we're talking about 2.3 million people living in 365 kilometers square, which means buildings adjacent to one another, homes adjacent to one another,
Fuck, I want to talk about stuff that everyone that's like circling on Twitter, like breaking news this, breaking news that, but it could all be fake. Like it could literally all be fake. I'm seeing videos about Israel's Operation Iron Sword, that's their retaliation operation name, claiming that they've already begun bombing suspected Gaza-controlled buildings. But a lot of these are clearly fake because they don't even look like bombings. They look like controlled demolitions. Like shit like this, for example. Like Twitter is the most misinfo-filled shit in the universe right now. Israel launched Operation Iron Sword. Israel destroys third Gaza tower occupied by... And look, it's like a fucking demolition. Like, oh yeah, how'd they do that, right? Like, people are just posting anything, like any video, whatever. You can't believe any of this shit. This video could be from 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago. Like, I don't think that Israel went in and took the time to plant shaped charges for a careful demolition of a Gaza building while, like, 2 seconds after fucking Hamas invaded or whatever. Like, yeah, so there's tons of misinfo. I'm seeing this from 51 minutes ago claiming that a Palestinian journalist has been killed by Israeli soldiers while covering the events near the Hamas invasion. Is it true? I have no idea. I don't know. But like Twitter says it, so I don't know. A lot of this stuff I really can't cover because, like, there's so much misinfo, and it gets worse every time there's conflict. Like, there are pro-Israeli accounts that are posting shit like this. Like, is that Israel bombing a Hamas building? I'm gonna guess no. This is probably from a long time ago, judging from how blurry the camera is. Like, who the fuck knows, right? But, like, yeah, whatever, who knows? I don't think that's real. That's not real. That's fake. Especially with Twitter blue checks, they'll literally just put fake Al Jazeera or AP News logos in old vids. Yeah. This guy's death has been reported heavily by Palestinian sources. So you're saying that this is verified, or at least people are talking about it as though it's been verified? Let me check. 2 Palestinian journalists killed in Israeli shelling 19 minutes ago from jordannews.jo. That's the Jordan domain. It just says that it was this guy and another guy called Omar Abu Shawish. So maybe that is true? It's never good when journalists are getting killed. But if he was killed in shelling, then it wasn't a targeted killing. But Israel loves targeted journalists, or targeted journalist killings, so, you know. Why they kill journalists? If it was shelling, then it wasn't on purpose. You never like, nobody... Assassinations are generally not done by shelling. I guess it's possible, but it's probably not likely. Not an assassination, just getting caught in the crossfire. Which is bad, obviously, not an excuse. Though, again, Israel does deliberately assassinate journalists. They do like doing that. I remember Garbagool. Wasn't that what led to our big Palestinian donation drive?
Crowded refugee camps with thousands, hundreds of thousands of people in some refugee camps, which means that every airstrike or every targeting means that the entire neighborhood or the entire place surrounding that place targeted is into or subjected to a destruction as well. People here in Gaza also because...
Carry on.
Yes, Nick. Because of the borders, the Erez crossing, which only allows humanitarian cases and workers to cross into the occupied West Bank, is now totally closed, while the Rafah crossing into Egypt is also closed. It means that people here in Gaza are just not able to leave the Gaza Strip at any time. In most cases, they were not allowed. But now, as we are witnessing the beginning of a war, it makes or puts great pressure on...
See a gruesome fucking video of what looks to be like a dozen or so civilians in a small room that have all been gunned down. I have no idea if it's actually from this conflict or from another. It's from a blue check mark, so, you know, who the fuck knows. Hindu rights activist. Yeah, that's real. Indians going crazy on the TL. Indian nationalists are super pro-Israel because they love the fact that Israel is stomping on Palestinian Muslims. So you'll often see like a huge wave of pro-Israeli shit come out of Indian and Hindu accounts. But also super anti-Semitic. Hindu nationalists are more anti-Muslim than they are anti-Semitic. They're both, but they're more anti-Muslim than they are anti-Semitic.
The civilians that they have to stay in their homes and just witness this war.
Yumna, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks very much indeed, Yumna Al-Sayed. We can hear rockets still being fired out of Gaza across the border. Yumna, thanks very much indeed for the time being. Excuse me. Let's cross now to Rob Reynolds, who's live for us in occupied East Jerusalem. Rob, what's happening there?
Well, it's been quiet for the last little bit here. There haven't been any more rockets in the sky that we could see, and no more sirens going off. But Israeli media is reporting that now at least 5 Israelis have been killed in the rocket barrage from Gaza. That's up from 1 earlier in the day. They say that rockets have impacted in Tel Aviv and in other cities in the southern part of Israel. This all, again, have to emphasize, coming as a total shock to...
What's the objective for Hamas here? It has to be the hostage thing, right? Hostage, martyrdom, you know, whatever. They're lunatics. Terrorists are lunatics. Never forget this.
Israeli citizens and to the Israeli government, and especially to Israeli intelligence, that this strike from
Israel's news channel 12 reporting at least 22 Israelis dead. It's going to be more than that, man. I mean, like, that one room of all the Israeli civilians gunned down is at least a dozen of them. Like, unless that's more than half of the dead, like, it's going to end up being a lot more than that.
Gaza on a scale such as this could take place without any warning. Almost 50 years to the exact day of the 1973 October War that also took Israel completely by surprise and led to many, many Israeli army casualties. Again, here in Jerusalem, things appear to be calm, at least at the moment, in terms of any fighting, any rocket barrages, or any incursions, nothing like that. Here, the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government and defense officials and intelligence officials are meeting, trying to establish what to do next. We have heard that the Israeli army has shelled some areas of Gaza. Again, there are, as we've been pointing out throughout the morning, apparently some Israeli soldiers taken captive by these armed incursions from Gaza. We've seen pictures of them on social media. Excuse me. They have been taken back into Gaza, so they are...
Hamas has called on Hezbollah to invade from Lebanon. Good luck.
Their status is unknown at the moment, so obviously that'll be a factor in the Israeli army's decision where and when to strike. They
President
don't want
G,
to
we cry out
their
for
own
freedom.
people.
We are asking for your aid.
That's avoidable in any way.
Right, and Rob, if I can just jump in there.
A full-scale response in the coming hours.
Yeah, this development of Israeli soldiers being taken prisoner really does...
This global politics still is centered around Palestine-Israel conflict as much as it was 10 to 15 years ago. It's really not as much of a deal as a lot of people make it out to be. Palestine is already, like, fucking lost to Israel. Like, there's no war here, you know? It's not 2 nuclear powers, you know? Other countries aren't going to invade Israel. Like, Iran's not going to invade Israel or whatever. They'd lose. You know, it's not really a powder keg for international conflict. Better examples of powder kegs for international conflict would be like China, Taiwan, or you know, Pakistan, India, or whatever. But it's still important.
Present a different kind of dynamic to the usual scenario when these escalations happen.
Yes, it does. It's rare that Israeli soldiers are captured, and it shows, again, how extraordinary this operation is out of Gaza. The paragliders, the armed squads of men moving through the streets of Sderot, which is the city sort of closest to Gaza, the Israeli city. We see pictures of them in vehicles and on foot, moving apparently quite calmly and in a disciplined manner through the streets. I think we are hearing some sirens just now. Yes, somewhat distant. Samir, can you see any contrails in the sky?
I cannot see in the sky anything.
No, nothing in the sky at the moment. So my comments about things being calm here were apparently premature, or at least not entirely up to date. But getting back to the idea of captives, yes, indeed, there was an Israeli soldier captured on the border with Lebanon some years ago, whose fate ripped the entire.
According to a military source, IAF jets have so far dropped more than 16 tons of munitions. On what? IDF publishes footage of strikes on Hamas assets. This isn't current. This is being linked to from the Times of Israel. Is this seriously supposed to be from today? This is from today, allegedly? It says, yeah, it says from today. They got this footage out within a few hours, like from the drone cameras, like right away. Well, this is all just like fucking Call of Duty drone strike mission, people getting obliterated in like a fucking monochrome pixel or whatever. It was live streamed. They're claiming that it's from today. What's the source? They're saying that the IDF published this, and it's being posted in the Times of Israel, which is, you know, a reputable newspaper, as newspapers go, as I understand it. We're not going to know the details until after the dust settles. Hezbollah praises Hamas, says attack is message to Arab countries normalizing ties with Israel.
Nation and led to many months and years of negotiations, finally into okay, we're seeing seems like two contrails in the sky. I'm also seeing a puff of smoke that indicates that
Do not show on stream, but what appears to be a woman's body being driven through the streets. Yeah, I saw it. They stripped her naked, and they were, like, spitting on her and driving her around in the flatbed of a truck. Not great for optics. I don't think Allah smiles on that. But, you know, I'm not a Islamic scholar.
Rocket has been intercepted. You can hear sirens in the distance. I'd also point out that many of the streets and roads and highways leading into Jerusalem and leading towards the southern part of Israel have been closed as the army has declared a state of war alert. So we don't know what's happening with this particular missile. Are we seeing another one?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Nothing quite like looking at the live stream chat of a news channel during a time of conflict. So you see where the real war plays out. People typing in all caps, I stand with Israel and Allahu Akbar. These are where the real soldiers are. What am I looking at? What town is this? Where? I mean, I assume this is the Strip because of the fucking Muslim singer. Not singer, you know what I fucking mean. What's that noise? That's a combination of an air raid siren and the Muslim yelling guy. Call to prayer. Yeah, there's one Polish guy spamming Deus Volt in chat. Polish Arkadas. Deus, but they're Jews? Yeah, this is probably not like Israeli Jewish territory. Yeah, I saw Netanyahu's statement.
Well, let's get the very latest.
I hate Polish people. Whoa, hold on, I'm Polish. Can I get, like, a reporter with some commentary, please? Why can I not scroll back? Oh, it's live only, I see. Okay, so no one's actually doing any journalism right now. Okay. $165,000 people watching Al Jazeera Arabic.
بينها إصابات حرجة وخطرة وجرت الإشارة أيضا إلى حالات موت سريري ل9 إصابات كما ذكر وتحدثت أيضا القناة 12 الإسرائيلية عن 22 قتيلا إسرائيليا حتى الآن.
Just explain it briefly.
Oh, this guy.
Israel, has always lived on these two images, right? It is a victor and it is a victim. For Israel, it's very important to be always seen as invincible, because it's a tiny state in a very big Arab and Muslim region. It's very important for it, for its own security, for its own national security, for its national doctrine, to be invincible. It cannot afford any loss, a major loss. But here what we have is Israel, the victim, been humiliated. There's a big difference between Israel claims to be a victim of terrorism and Israel being humiliated by the Palestinian resistance. And humiliation is not just something that we can count by the number of deaths of Israeli soldiers, for example, or even if Israeli civilians, as painful as...
He's describing the basic pretext for mass hysteria in a fascist government, where you simultaneously project incredible existential strength, but also you face constant humiliation from this seemingly overwhelming force, and the rhetorical ability to play on both of those contrasting dissonant beliefs allows you to drum up constant, aggressive fervor. He's correct in this.
Palestinians certainly has been planning this. I remember when covering the 2020 brief war against jihad, when Hamas refused to join, I think I mentioned something along the line, Hamas was not ready to join, because Hamas was still recovering from the 2014 war, and Hamas was preparing itself. Well, clearly, it was preparing itself in a new and creative and inventive ways. And as you said, and from the images that we've seen, and once again, Israel will not get a second chance for the first impression. The first impression, since the first early hours of the morning, is humiliation, humiliation, humiliation. Watching multitudes of Israelis fleeing their homes and their towns and running out in the desert in the south, outside of Sderot and outside of the various kibbutzim in Israel, that humiliation, that will never be forgotten. And just to go to another point on this, just quickly, I don't think Netanyahu is going to be able to withstand this scandal, to withstand this security fiasco that happened under his watch. So Hamas has planned an entire scene, apparently, a military one, in a new inventive ways, by flying over the air security barrier that Israel set up, something like the Egyptians tried to invent in the way they bypassed the Israeli Bar-Lev line. So they created the new ways, and they came from various aspects and various directions into these southern Israeli towns and settlements. Now, just as a reminder, again, for our viewers around the world, more than 80% of the 2+ million people living in Gaza come originally from those very areas that they are attacking now, except their villages and towns no longer exist, but you have Israeli settlements. So they are not strangers to the land. And for many decades, they actually worked as cheap labor in many of these settlements. So the Palestinian in Gaza and the generation of Muhammad Deif and Yahya Sinwar that today lead those operations, it's a very familiar terrain for them, those Israeli settlements. And
lol, illegal Israeli settlers having to flee. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I think that being a direct participant in the like settler project, as an Israeli, it makes you a huge piece of shit. I don't think it means you get to be killed by Hamas. Like, I don't want to whitewash this here, okay? Like, Israel, the government, has committed many crimes against the Palestinian people, but obviously individual Israelis are capable of doing bad things, and my impression is that many of the people who engage in like the settlement expansion are not just like random people, but people who are very aggressively in favor of like taking the land from the Palestinians. Not in all cases, but that like often these aren't these aren't people who are just like random dudes where like they volunteer because they want to be the vanguard for reconquering, or like not reconquering, but like taking the territory. Like a lot of them are like super religious nuts or like Israeli nationalists, like fucking insanely anti Palestinian. Again, you know, I'm not trying to whitewash any of that shit. However, that doesn't mean they deserve to get killed by Hamas, right? Like they're still the victim there, you know? Like God, it's like it's the fucking nuance thing, man, cuz it's always like different shades of being a piece of shit, but Hamas will like always be the biggest piece of shit. So they kind of like throw it all out in the water, you know? It's like right now there's videos of them like gunning down civilians, and in that context it's very difficult to be like, ah, well, sociologically, remember that, you know, the bad things happen. The bad things did happen, of course, but like you know, we know what Hamas is doing. I'm really fucking surprised that like Israeli settlers aren't gun nuts the way that Americans are. Like American Southerners will arm themselves like Red Dawn is approaching, and meanwhile, like I feel they are. Well, then what the fuck are they doing? Because there are videos of like one truck of Hamas militia members rolling up on a town, like with exposed sight lines to rooftops and windows everywhere. I guess I'm just surprised that like all of like a bunch of lunatic Israeli settlers weren't like, shucks, this is my chance, and then all like whipped out fucking rifles and just perforated the truck. But I don't know. Yeah, for sure. Israel like Israel has a state policy of human shields by using civilian settlers as the front line for their like project of conquest, you know? Like Israel doesn't even have the fucking dignity to like take that land with soldiers who are rightful combatants. Instead, they force out Palestinians and they put civilians there and make civilians the line of conflict. And that's disgusting, and it's Israel's choice to do that. They choose to do that. Like that, it's insane of them, and they still do it. But also, Hamas is still the worst, you know? But this is what Hamas does. This is how they fuck things up. Hamas takes a situation where the Palestinians are being like like totally victimized, and Israel is completely in the wrong. And then for a brief moment in time, Israel gets to be in the right in being anti-Hamas, you know? Like that's the great tragedy. That's the reason why Netanyahu fucking loves Hamas. That's why Netanyahu sucks Hamas cock. far-right fear-mongering dipshit politicians love shit like this because it justifies the fear-mongering. It means that Netanyahu gets to throw gets to throw his hands up and go, hey, see? All that crazy fear-mongering and all the rights that you've lost, and all the concessions you've made, and all the far-right politics, all of them were justified, you know? It's the same reason that conservative politicians love it when there's a flood of migrants at the border. It's the same reason why the far-right rose to prominence in Europe following the Syrian refugee crisis. Every single time this happens, every time there's a perceived or real, as Hamas is, threat from outside, the far right gains ground. And they know it, which is why they love it.
And towns and so on and so forth. So I think the way this has been organized in a totally asymmetrical fashion, in a totally creative fashion, in order to not only take hostages, not only to kill Israeli soldiers, but to humiliate Israel and to show its vulnerabilities and lack of invincibility. I think that's the thing that the history books will be talking about for many, many years to come.
Okay, Marwan Bashara there first in Paris. Thank you. Let's go back to Yumna al-Said, who is in Gaza.
Tiny note, those kibbutz are near Gaza, but within the 1967 borders, the international community doesn't consider them settlements. However, didn't they go past that? Didn't they claim the more recent? Okay, gotcha. I mean, it doesn't change my point, because my point ultimately is like Hamas is the worst. I feel like the closest comparison to this that I can think of, like in an American context, is you know how we totally fucked over the Native Americans? Like, we killed a bunch of them, drove them from the territory, made a treaty, broke the treaty, killed a bunch of them, moved them from the territory, killed them, like, over and over and over and over again. And then, like, past a point, every once in a while, there would be, like, a western town where people would get, like, kidnapped or shot or whatever. Like, you'd have, like, Indian tribes that would just, like, kill civilians. And that's bad, but, like, what happened to contextualize everything leading up to that point, right? Like, they're in the wrong. Like, if the US, like, I don't know, Western Marshals go out to kill some natives that, like, killed civilians or whatever, like, okay, fuck it, yeah, they killed civilians, you know, fucking whatever, go forth, kill them. But that's never, like, where the conversation begins and ends. Obviously, stuff like this happens in the context of broader sociological forces, and you have to address those if you want anything to actually change.
For us, Yumna, bring us up to date with the situation there.
Settlers aren't civilians, sorry. Yeah, they are. Being a settler doesn't make you a fucking combatant. Is there an acceptable way to stop civilian colonizers then? Yeah, you just can't, like, murder all of them. Like, we've talked about this, right? Like, if at most you can, like, kick them out, you know? But even then, like, you can't kill civilians. Well, yeah, beta goodness, they're Islamic fascists. They're Islamofascists or whatever. I'm not defending them. Yeah, you can drive them out with loud music, all right? Hamas is allowed to play bangers on the speakers and drive them out by annoying them.
Well, until now, there are Israeli airstrikes being carried in different areas in Gaza, but the largest attack was on the Erez crossing. Until now...
Luca, people fucking love killing civilians. Literally, like, we were seeing it in the live stream chat. I saw this all over Twitter. A bunch of people are like, I hope they go into to Gaza and finish the job this time, you know? Like, I don't want punish for Hamas. I want punish for all Palestine. Like, I've seen so many comments like that. Because, and again, like, Israelis are not, like, genetically fascist or whatever. Do keep in mind that the fact that, okay, let's be real, like, the average Israeli citizen probably does not give a shit about Palestinians, like, or their lives or whatever. The fucking polling over there, the polling on what Israelis feel about Palestinians is fucking horrific. It's really fucking bad. You know? It's really bad. But that didn't just happen, like, out of nowhere. This is after decades of conservative leadership and protracted conservative media indoctrination that has kept them in a constant state of fear and paranoia over Palestinians and exacerbated, like, ethnic, racial, and religious tensions. It's a product of, like, very deliberate decisions made by very powerful people. And this has led to a very unfortunate set of circumstances. Adam Halpern, thank you so much for the very kind $50. This is the 50-year anniversary of a previous conflict Israel had. That's what led to this specifically. As for recent uptick in violence, I mean, Hamas and Israel have been going at it meaningfully for a while, like, you know, longer than I've been doing politics, at least. How is Hamas fascist, by the way? Basically, all Islamic militancy groups operate pretty indistinguishably from fascist. Like, Islamofascism, I feel, is an underused term. It's almost universally applicable. Like, you literally just have to swap over the specific cultural signifiers that they're obsessed over, and the logic transcribes, like, almost effortlessly. You know, like ISIS is the easiest case. Like ISIS is textbook fascist. You know, like perfect transpose. And Hamas too. Obviously, the Islamofascism things they emphasize more, like religious martyrdom and death cult and blah blah. But
we are not even able to know the number of casualties that have fallen there.
Conscripts aren't that different from civilians. Yeah, I mean, it really fucking sucks if you're in a war and the enemy does conscriptions, because you are, like, basically fighting civilians, but you're also not. You know, for one, they have uniforms, they are designated combatants, they're not like children or whatever. But also, like, you have to follow those rules, right? Because obviously you have to fight combatants. Like, conscripts have guns, you know, like they're coming out there to fight you. But if you're like, oh well, I can't fight them, then you lose. And if you're like, ah well, you know, what are civilians but conscripts to be, then you might as well just kill everyone, you know. So settlers are civilians and conscripts aren't. Yeah, of course, because conscripts are given a uniform, military training, a gun, and they're placed under the command of an officer who tells them to march at you and shoot you. And settlers are not that.
That have fallen from that attack. It seems that even local journalists and local eyewitnesses from the area are saying that they cannot contact any ambulances to get to the area. Some people are even reported missing from that attack. Other than that, Israeli warplanes are still firing and striking other areas.
Vaush settlers are not just civilians, they're more akin to civil militias. They're armed and force Palestinians out of their home and destroy their property with the help of the IDF. Yeah, they're civilians who are assisted by the IDF in their settler colonial behavior. That is definitely true, but they are definitely still civilians. Like, that's piece of shit behavior, but they're still civilians. Like, they're not. Yeah, like cops are civilians.
Areas belonging to the fighting groups of the Palestinian fighting groups here in the Gaza Strip, while the Ministry of Health has just announced about 3 people killed. And
do settlers have the power to not go and settle there as a force them? No, they choose to, but that just makes them assholes. It doesn't mean that they're combatants.
Till this moment, one of the medical crews in the Indonesian school, hospital targeting earlier, and 2 of the Palestinian Democratic Front fighters.
And Yumna, we were talking a little earlier, and you were saying that there were people celebrating out on the street.
No, but it does make them fair game. I'm sorry. No, it doesn't. Come on, don't be a fucking psycho, okay? Participating in and benefiting from the, like, horrific policies of your country does not make you a like, you are definitionally wrong here. If you think that they're morally culpable for their behavior, that's fine, but they're objectively not combatants. Like, that's there's no room for argument here. That's not like a subjective, wishy-washy, blurry line definition. They're not combatants. And, like, I don't know, you're fantasizing about, like, you're fighting the IDF or whatever, and then you kick down a door and you see, like, a civilian family, and you're like, hey, you're legit. You're justified target as well. Grrr. Like, what are we doing here? Come on. What about when they engage in combat? Yeah, if a civilian picks up a gun and shoots at a soldier, then they are then a combatant because they are combating you. Yeah. Yes, soldiers are allowed to defend themselves against civilians taking up arms against them. What if they identify as a combatant? Ah, well, sorry, biologically, you're actually a civilian. You will never be a combatant. Yeah, and as Chad pointed out, it's not even settlers who are being attacked. It's Israelis who are in parts of land that have been Israel's for decades and decades.
Streets in reaction to this operation. Is that something that is still going on, or are people now waiting to see what's going to happen, and especially now that the operation on the Strip has now started?
Well, the celebration...
Who stole land with the backing of the U.S.? No. Occupants of territory that Israel has held since 48 did not steal that land with the backing of the U.S. They're not that old. They're regular people born onto land that they felt a connection to because they were born there. The geopolitical circumstances surrounding their occupancy are unfortunate, but you can't blame them for that. Like, you can't blame civilians for that, you know? Even the asshole Israeli civilians who participate actively in the settler project, you know? Like, you can blame them for that, like, because they're doing that. But that's not, like, moral culpability that gives them the role of combatant.
Celebration wasn't really in the celebration of the entering of or the capturing of one, or taking over of one of the military vehicles and roaming with it in the Gaza Strip.
Vaush, I generally agree with these comments. What if we say someone working in Russia making guided bombs? Is that a valid military target? No. What you're talking about there is strategic bombing. A military target. So what is or is not a military target ties into like depots, military controlled bases, silos, modes of transportation. But if you start extrapolating into, well, actually all industry is a military target, then you're doing strategic targeting, and that's what we did in World War II. And that's why like a bunch of cities were reduced into ash in World War II. Because it's like, well, if you think about it, the war economy is sustained by every single citizen in the country. So basically everyone everywhere is like a military target. Hiroshima is a military target because Hiroshima's economy supports Imperial Japan, you know? A better example would be if there are Russian civilians who have moved into Crimea following its annexation in 2014, are they justified targets? Because that's 2014. That's recent, okay? The Russians who are in Crimea, unless they're like 5 years old or whatever, they chose to move into annexed territory and participate in Russia's project of like the Russification of Crimea. And that still doesn't make them combatants or valid military targets, you know? That, I mean, I'm sure a lot of them are assholes, but like the punishment for being an asshole is you can say mean words to them, right?
Streets, that was just for a couple of minutes, but there was some of the people who were celebrating by the borders, where the borders were infiltrated by the fighters.
Perhaps streaming about this was not a great idea. Oof, defending the slighted. Are you fucking retarded? Wait, hold on. So Jan 6 morons should be let go. Cool, Jan 6 folks were just following Trump. Yikes, Vaush defends Jan 6ers. You've been here since 2021. You don't deserve my stream. You're retarded. You're in a fucking IQ vortex. You're pulling it from other people. Go away. What is wrong with you people? Jesus fuck. People act like such deranged psychopaths whenever anything Israel Palestine comes up, as opposed to me. I've never said anything deranged. Oh, it's a DGGer. I go back to their chat logs in 2021 and it's them desperately asking me to make up with Destiny. Okay, there we go. Now it makes sense. IQ Vortex indeed. Oh yeah, same. Yeah. They've only been in chat 3 times in just as many years, and every time it's the same. God damn. Nothing but the best from that community. What time is it in Seattle? 3 a.m.
and they were able to go into the other side, into the Israeli towns. But now the general sense and the general atmosphere in Gaza is really a mixture of fear and worry of what is going to happen in these coming hours, especially that Israel has announced the beginning of its or launching of its
Chad has been infiltrated by
retaliating
DGG paragliders.
operation.
They're boat
You now,
fans.
Saeed, there for us in Gaza. Let's turn to Rob Reynolds, who is now in Ashkelon in southern Israel. Ashkelon, of course, where we saw some of the worst pictures that took place this morning. A lot of fire when the rocket strikes hit Ashkelon, closest to the Gaza border. So normally an area that would be seeing the brunt of the attack. So the latest figures we're hearing, 22 Israelis killed by this attack this morning in Hamas, Rob. What more can you tell us about the situation where you are?
Well, we've made our way to Ashkelon, which is close to Gaza, and really behind me here you can see a checkpoint manned by Israeli police and soldiers. This is as far as anyone can get. Down that road is Gaza. If we look over in this direction to our right here, we can see towers of smoke rising, apparently from missile strikes that have come out of Gaza to Ashkelon. There's also an industrial facility there with smoke coming out of the smokestack, but also a lot of black and white smoke. And just while we were here, not maybe more than 15 minutes ago, we saw several missiles coming from Gaza. You can see the contrails in the air arcing through the air, and then we heard a concussion, and then over in this direction,
DGG settlers be considered combatants. Okay, yeah. So I guess the summary is that the situation is fucked.
Away, and nobody can sit back. Nobody will sit back idly to the denial of freedom. While their rights are being taken away from them, while their land is being taken away from them, while their kids are being imprisoned, and their homes being destroyed. Nobody's going to take that very idly, and certainly not the Palestinians. It's only surprising that it has taken this long because of the fact that Israel has continued to do this, as I said, for 56 years of brutal military occupation.
We've had fighting talk from the Israeli Prime Minister this morning saying that we are at war. How concerned are you for the people in Gaza, the ordinary people in Gaza, who will feel the brunt of what is to come, no doubt, from the Israelis? I think
also, Vaush, by your logic, Crimea should stay with Russia since many Russians are born and raised there. Okay. This is for your own good, okay? What I need you to do is I need you to find the nearest wall, all right? And I need you to stand up straight in front of it and then rapidly bow over and over and over again until what you just said feels to you as stupid as it is objectively. I am not saying that Crimea should stay with Russia. I'm saying that you shouldn't gun down Crimean civilians. We were talking about whether or not you're justified in killing civilians who are part of a settler project, and I said that you were not. At no point did I say, oh, my mistake. Oh, you're just gonna acknowledge that you misunderstood. You're gonna make me feel bad for hyperbolically insulting you. Now I have to feel bad and dial it down. And oh wow, way to add insult to injury, huh? First you misunderstand, and now you don't even give me 8 to 10 minutes to go off. Okay, no, fine, great, all right. Being reasonable.
I think we may have lost connection there with Diana Boutou, a Palestinian lawyer and a former legal advisor to the Palestine Liberation Organization. Let's bring in Al Jazeera's senior political analyst, Marwan Bashara. He's live for us in Paris. And I guess I just...
How the fuck are there 6K people here? I'm barely talking and it's 3 a.m. What are you all? You're all British? What?
I want to put that same point to you, Marwan, because we can't forget that it is the ordinary people, the ordinary residents, you know, with families and children living in Gaza, many of whom who may not want any part of this, who are going to feel the real repercussions of what is to come?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's why, in as much as we're talking about the very dramatic events since early this morning, I think the future certainly holds more tragedy for Israel-Palestine for the simple reason that the Israeli leaders refuse to learn the lessons of history, that colonialism in the 21st century is certainly not acceptable, that it is passé, that it simply cannot go on occupying another people for more than 5 decades. And in a sense, and that's what we in the media...
Do you have a recommendation for how to solve the Israeli-Palestine conflict as an Israeli-Palestinian or third party? The problem is that, like, the only way to fix this is massive concessions from the Israeli government, right? Like, realistically, the Jews aren't, like, leaving. That's not happening. And the Palestinians, well, Israel wants them to leave and would probably be willing to do that, but I don't want that to happen. So a two-party or a two-state solution is, like, the only realistic thing. Maybe a two-state solution with, like, some kind of legally enshrined council that has equal representation from both Israel and Palestine that manages disputes and engagements between both countries. Maybe even a demilitarized zone between the two. I don't know. Like, and also a bunch of territory is going to have to go back to the Palestinians. Like, the problem is that, like, it's gonna end up being like 99.9% concessions from Israel, because the Israelis are the ones who have done the most harm and have the power to change things, right? They have the power, and they're the ones who have been taking and robbing and hurting. So obviously they're the ones who are going to have to dial that shit back. I'm glad you're enjoying Berserk Demon Mama. It's extremely good. Like, incredibly, incredibly good. Haven't you said there should be a secular one-state solution for? That's the ideal, but that's not going to fucking happen. Like, that's like the magic if I could snap my finger solution, but, like, realistically it's not going to happen, you know? It'd be nice, but it's not going to happen. But yeah, the only institution, the only group that has the power to change the state of affairs is Israel. They're the ones with the power to change things. Right now, the thing that Israel is attempting to do to quote-unquote fix this problem is slowly ethnically cleanse the Palestinian people, taking more and more land illegally in violation of international law, to confine Palestinians into an open-air concentration camp where they will have very little freedom, very few political rights, very little water, very little access to outside resources and materials. Israel will box them in and prevent other countries from giving them aid. This has already happened. This is all already happening. They're just going to keep it going and make it worse and worse and worse. And over time, they will either leave it essentially as like a dystopian ghetto, or they will engage in an extermination project where they will enforce conditions that cause starvation or lowered birth rates until eventually there are no more Palestinians. That is the current direction that Israel is heading. It is monstrously evil. So I feel like morally I'm well within my right to say that they should probably not do that. You know, like, that my personal opinion is that they shouldn't do that, even in the wake of a tragedy like this caused by Hamas. Of course, what has happened here today as a product of Hamas, because of Hamas, will lead to a furthering of that project. So, will denying Israel aid do anything? It is possible that America, and only America, could keep this from happening with severe economic pressure. Israel is not on the best footing when it comes to managing its own affairs independently. And Biden has been pretty cold to Israel and Netanyahu. So, I don't know. But I doubt we would do that. Well, let's push for that no. I do. I do. You think the U.S. should play a role in stopping Israel? I mean, certainly we should stop giving them money and shit. Ganek Capra with the 30 shekels. Vaush, you are really not that informed as you think. I assume you are not interested in talking to Israeli chatter. Yeah, sure. Friend request me on Discord. It's just Vaush. Same as the channel name. Yeah. No bedtime for me. I'm trying to see if I can find a message from them in chat to see if I can ask. Link to the Discord. No. Just friend request me on Discord. You don't have to get in my Discord. You can just do that directly. Also, what's your Discord name? Vosh, you're likely going to get bombarded with historical and policy factoids. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done any research or like any looking up on the super specifics. And I'm pretty tired, but like whatever. We'll take it slow and we'll learn. I'm Capricorn Discord. Cool. All right. Check my... I don't see it. You can just friend request. It's just Vosh. Just like the name.